Hello everyone and welcome to this lunchtime learning session hosted by OSB. This is the first in our Green Mortgage Masterclass Series, and the first topic promises to be a meaty one, centering on valuation, property assessment and the green premium. Energy efficiency has risen up the mortgage market agenda in recent years, partially due to proposed EPC legislation from the previous government, the cost of living crisis putting pressure on energy bills, and the uptick of green mortgages in the market. Labour has taken on the energy efficiency baton, pledging in its election-winning manifesto to invest an extra £6.6 billion to improve energy efficiency and to upgrade 5 million homes. Its Warm Homes plan will offer grants and low-interest loans for things like insulation, solar panels, batteries, and low-carbon heating, and so on. The manifesto also said that it would work with banks and building societies to offer further private finance for home upgrades and low-carbon heating, and that private homes should meet minimum energy efficiency standards by 2030. Better data has also meant there's more information than ever available on the energy efficiency of a property. But is this influencing buyer behaviour and house prices? And is it creating a green premium or a brown discount? I am joined by Will Hinds, Head of Real Estate at OSB Group, to talk through these topics. And there will be a Q&A session at the end, so please submit your questions as we go. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Will to kick off the session.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Will Hinds. I'm the Real Estate Manager here at One Savings Bank. And today the session will be on valuation, property assessment and the green premium. By way of background, I'll go over the agenda for today in the first instance. So we're going to go over the background to this area. We're going to talk about energy efficiency and property value. So is there a green premium or a brown discount? Then I'll move on to discuss how is energy efficiency influencing home buying decisions and shaping the market, followed by what are the main challenges facing energy efficiency improvements, and then finally, what can be done to overcome these challenges. So just moving on, by way of background, Anna's set the scene very well there, but what I would add to that is from a regulatory point of view, since 2018, when the minimum energy efficiency standard, or also known as the MEES rules, were introduced, all rental homes and all commercial rental properties have required a minimum EPC rating of E. Now, obviously, we've had changing government. Previously, the indications were that a minimum rating of C was going to be required by 2028, which is moved to 2030. But in December last year, the government launched an open consultation seeking views on the reform of the energy performance of buildings framework. Now, this means that the metrics used in EPCs and the reporting requirements, these are likely to change as a result of this. The consultation period is currently due to end at the end of February next month. So the outcome of that will provide a little bit more clarity as to, from a regulatory perspective, of what is likely to be required. However, as lenders and as practitioners in the market and all of our landlord borrowers, etc., are still minded that there's a general move towards improving energy efficiency. So the challenge remains, regardless of regulations, is how we go about combating this. So I'll move on now to the question of energy efficiency and property value. Now, is there actually a green premium or a brown discount? Now, first thing to say here is that actually quantifying the direct impact of improved energy efficiency on property value is actually really complicated, because obviously it normally forms part of a wider refurbishment program. So to what degree is the value increase down to the improved specification versus purely the energy efficiency improvements? And this has been the challenge for the sector and for the various analysts and research providers for the last few years. I did a review of the market research out there nationwide recently in October last year, suggested that there's actually more of a difference between green versus brown properties in the buy-to-let sector than there is in the owner-occupier sector. So their research suggested that if you look at the differential in value or prices paid from EPCs A/B over EPC D for owner-occupied properties, they identified a 2.8% premium versus rental properties or buy-to-let properties where the premium is interestingly 11.5%. So suggesting that there is obviously much more merit if you look at it from a purely financial perspective in doing these works to a rental property versus an owner-occupied property. The other thing of note is that green value premiums tend to be much higher in low capital value areas such as Wales, North East England. That's because these utility cost savings tend to be a higher proportion of both disposable income and capital value. So obviously it makes a big difference proportionally in those locations. Moving on to try and find more data to support this differential, Oxford Economics in October last year issued the graph on this slide. Now, if you take EPC rated properties D as your starting point, and then from that you try and calculate what the average value discount is or premium, depending on which way you go. So they found that comparing A/B residential properties with D, there was an average of 3.4% premium. To go from D to C was fairly minimum 0.5%, and then discounting the other way, if you go from D to E, 3.4%, and then obviously F to G, it goes down to 7.4%, a big drop off. So that's another way of trying to quantify this. But what we do see is there clearly is an impact on property value here. But it doesn't stop at that, because on this slide, we can see that the other elements taken into account are for more energy efficient properties, occupiers tend to pay a higher rent. Not only is it better conditioned space, but utility costs and their running costs will be lower, so they can afford to pay more on the rent side. In line with this, they also tend to have shorter marketing periods, both on the sales side and the rental side. So you're going to minimise your voids as a property owner, and likely to attract a higher quality of tenant. So the quality of that income in turn and the likely management implications are improved. So there are the sort of non-financial but tangible benefits of energy efficiency. If you look at the commercial sector, occupiers are increasingly prioritising sustainability credentials of buildings. They have their ESG targets to hit, especially the larger public companies, and it's really been in the spotlight the last few years. And I tried to find some data to really demonstrate this, particularly in the office sector. There weren't any graphs available, but I know that there is an increasing divergence between A-rated office buildings in particular versus those which are B/C. A big reason for this is obsolescence risk. Obviously, you're going to have to spend huge amounts in retrofitting the buildings to comply with updated energy requirements and occupier needs as well, and as well as the trends for occupiers to prefer greener buildings. And not only this, the employees are becoming more demanding in terms of the quality of their workspaces. So if you have a high quality, whether it be office or even warehousing or retail properties, you're likely to attract a higher quality of staff and also improve staff retention. So that's other trends that are being seen increasingly. the last point on this, I'd say, is the reputationally, if you're a house builder or a commercial developer or a landlord, it improves your industry reputation if you operate greener buildings. Shows that you're more aligned with everybody else's values and the strive towards minimizing emissions. So moving on here, it's interesting research came out from NatWest in July last year. Now they did a review of home buyer preferences when it comes to energy efficiency. They found there are three key things that that home buyers are increasingly looking for. Well, they have a stronger consciousness to improve the environmental quality of their home. They have more demands for sustainable integrated features in their homes, and also in general, they just want to lead a greener lifestyle, be it through electric cars or public transport options or whatever it might be. So there is they produced this interesting chart here, which tries to prioritize the various energy improvement options for homes in terms of which ones are preferred. See, the ones with purple and red are the ones which are deemed essential by buyers or very important. So you can see double glazed windows as being number one, loft insulation close behind that, energy efficient lighting, LED bulbs save a lot over the old halogens. That's seen as quite an easy win. Tank and pipe insulation, then it goes down to cover to wall insulation. Interestingly, EPC ratings of C or above was relatively minimal. Only 20% of people seeing that as essential, which is quite interesting, suggesting that maybe there's a bit of an educational piece there at play. So I'll move on to the next slide. So yeah, I mean, further from the NatWest survey, they found that 40% of prospective home buyers still view a property's EPC rating as very important, but less consider an EPC rating of C as essential. And there is a trend for younger homeowners to prioritise sustainable buildings and more energy efficiency. So I think that's an educational piece. The more environmentally aware, so that's moving in the right direction. An industry data provider, CAMA, who provide us here at OSB with a lot of intelligence on our loan book. They in their recent survey, they've identified that out of all their respondents, about 25% of them are planning to improve the energy efficiency of their properties over the next 12 months. So it's very likely, and then 37% say it's likely. So it shows that this is very much in the forefront of homeowners' minds and in turn home buyers. And interestingly, they found that the majority are looking for efficient light bulbs, because obviously that's a relatively quick win, and then followed by insulation, new gas boilers, and then it goes down to heating controls, solar PV, and we can look at potential reasons for that in a minute, and heat pumps being a relatively low percentage of people considering. So moving on from this, so we asked what are the main challenges facing energy efficiency improvements. Firstly, there's a lack of availability of clear information on the cost-saving benefits of the various options, and also what are the actual upfront costs involved, and who can they actually find to install these various options. So I think there's a bit of an information gap there, or lack of consistent information. There's also there's a perception among homeowners that the only measure of retrofit success, as a retrofitting for improved energy efficiency, is a reduction in energy bills. And the people are not really aware that it future-proofs their homes, their investments, it improves their marketability, reduces marketing periods, and then obviously enhances the capital and rental values too. It's not just about the utility bills. I think one thing that's come out is that a lot of brokers may not be aware of the scale of the home decarbonisation challenge, but another factor at play is that due to the relatively small size of the green loans, there might not be sufficient fees to incentivise brokers to promote these loans. I mean, the availability of these loans is not particularly widespread, and obviously they tend to be for relatively low amounts in general, so there may be less of an incentive there. And also, general public perception is that it's actually the responsibility of the government to reach net zero by 2050, rather than homeowners taking responsibility themselves and having to bear the cost. Yeah, the main challenges, this is from the CAMA research providers as well. What is stopping customers from making more improvements to their homes? So the standout one by far is obviously the price, the cost implications. It's too expensive, and those that can afford it perhaps don't deem it a financial priority. They'd rather put their money elsewhere. Or they may decide that their house is already efficient enough, they're not back enough of what they put in, or maybe not within a sufficient time period, so it moves on to, there's a low return on investment from the actual fuel saving costs. So yeah, and then other factors as well that come out, a distrust in builders. So there's a lot of bad press about various installers of some of these initiatives, and you know, there might be a lack of trust in them, or that the homes just may simply not be suitable for retrofitting. So there's various options and reasons there. Interestingly, this slide here, I don't know whether you can see it. It's the colours don't work too well, but this came from our research provider CAMA as well. What are the top improvements for the OSB net zero journey in terms of actual options, insulation options for retrofitting? So draft proofing being one. If you look at the payback period, so to say the average cost across the tranche of about 110,000 properties on our loan book, the average cost of this is relatively low at £218, and the annual fuel saving is about £20. So you look at that in terms of the payback period or the return on investment, you're going to get your money back in, say, about 11 years. So, but it's a minimal outlay, so there's not such a barrier. Similarly with loft insulation, it's relatively inexpensive at £300 on average, and they estimate you can probably get your money back on that in say maybe 8-9 years on average. But if you move up the cost scale to installing photovoltaic panels, solar panels, so the average cost is works out at about £8,700 per home, but you're actually only saving on average about £320. So your payback period there is 25 years. It's quite lengthy, so you can see there's a bit of a barrier there to putting the upfront investment in. If you look at it purely on an energy bill saving basis, and then air source heat pumps. I've had a lot of press recently, and the installation cost there, I think it's around the £9,000 mark on average, but you're looking to save sort of £450 a year on average. So once again, there's a 20-odd year payback period for that too, if you look at it purely on the energy costs. So these are barriers. These are you know, if you're not planning on staying in your home for long enough to make those cost savings work for you, then that clearly it's a commercial decision you might not take. And so there's various things that are needed to be overcome from a perception point of view there. So my final slide, what can be done to overcome these challenges? So there's three main takeaways here. First one is we need a more proactive approach from the government in communicating the benefits of retrofitting homes. So this is basically clear information on potential cost savings, what is actually involved in installing these options, and what are the likely costs going to be, and really importantly, who are the approved installers who you can go to for quotes. If that's all in one place and it's all regulated, then that would make decision making a lot easier. The next one would be perhaps improved education for brokers, but also homeowners as well, everyone in the whole chain, on the benefits of retrofitting homes, perhaps incentivizing some of the brokers to promote green lending products is another route that could be explored. Finally, government incentives for lenders to offer our mortgage customers lower cost additional borrowing for retrofitting. This could be used as a supplement to government subsidies or grants that are already available, or which are soon to become available again. So these are all various options and routes that I think need to be investigated in order to make more progress. Anyway, so I'm going to hand now back to Anna, who's going to look at some potential questions.
Thanks so much, Will, for that really informative presentation. I think there's definitely a very interesting landscape at the moment. One question that I have is about you mentioned about commercial properties and how that kind of green premium and brown discount seems to be more pronounced there. I was wondering, how does it differ? Does it differ between different areas in the commercial sector, or is even from commercial to buy to let to residential? Is there like quite a significant difference, or how does it vary?
So if you look at the main commercial sectors, there's a huge divergence in values in terms of both rental and capital values for, in particular, offices, and increasingly for industrial. As for the office sector, the cost implications of bringing sort of a 1960s office building, which might have an EPC rating of E, up to an A or a B are really, really considerable. And so not only that, but it's got to be an incentive for any developer or owner to want to carry out those works. And so you're seeing a lot of those older office buildings having been repurposed, and there's a big drive towards those buildings with higher energy efficiency ratings. So offices, there's a huge divergence and increasing. Warehousing is really increasing as well. There's been a lot of development over the last few years, and that's sort of given occupiers more choice. So we're finding the older sort of 1940s, 50s, even up to 70s units are sticking more on the market, and so that's space to watch. I think I read a recent piece of research which suggested that for the small warehouse market, approximately 85% of the national stock is sort of EPC rated E or below. So there's potentially an enormous task ahead in bringing those in line with requirements. And the retail sector is once again, particularly retail warehousing, is becoming more an important factor. So yeah, I think those are probably the main takeaways there.
Something you also mentioned in the presentation was the size of loans versus fee. Is it also so? Does the way that those kinds of, does there need to be more innovation on the products available, or more products, as well as maybe a bit of a restructuring of how the broker fee works in that scenario? Do you think?
Yeah, I think a more innovative approach to the whole green loan system is needed. The availability of green loans is not actually that widespread, and there are some of the lenders offer rate kickers for EPC improvements in buildings, or like ourselves, we have a bridging product whereby you can use it for refurbishment of commercial properties and some residential properties. But it's really trying to promote those and make it actually financially viable for the end user.
A question's just come in about whether lenders would ever move towards taking into account energy savings on a highly rated EPC property when testing affordability on mortgages to allow higher amounts of lending. So the person who sent this in said this could help support the new build market. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, it does. There is an argument in favour of that when you're looking at ICRs or interest cover ratios, for example, of more energy efficient buildings, particularly when you take into account the actual running costs are less. So if they're rental properties, then the net position of the owner is improved. So there could well be scope and rationale for doing that. So I agree that that's definitely a way of potentially progressing this.
Great. And do you think, I was just thinking more kind of from a macro perspective, do you think that improvements in mortgage rates will kind of aid discussions around kind of making retrofitting more common in broker discussions? Do you think that it is the kind of the rate that might be putting some borrowers off?
Absolutely. I think we've seen a higher interest rate environment for the last couple of years, and it's been squeezing everyone's margins. There's been less money to reinvest in general, particularly into green initiatives. So a general trend downwards for rates across the board is likely to improve that, particularly when a lot of building owners and homeowners are commercially aware, and they know that they've got to future-proof their properties and move with the changing environment, really.
One question I had from the presentation, talking about the review into EPCs and the consultation that's due to end in February. Do you think, my question is twofold, is in an ideal world, what improvements would you like to see to the EPC process, and what changes do you think are likely? I know that's a very difficult question.
It's quite hard to predict, because I do think that based on the previous targets that were set of EPC C, potentially going out to EPC B for some properties further down, I think they were, when you looked at actually the logistics and the cost implications of doing that within the time frame, it was widely thought to be almost largely unattainable. So I think that by changing perhaps the targets and the scoring system, it might make it slightly more attainable. But that's purely speculation. I think that, but I think they just need to work closer with the lenders, with the brokers, and everybody across the whole value chain in a united front to improve the way the whole system works.
Yeah, for sure. And are there any measures that OSB are kind of taking to encourage customers to improve energy efficiency? Because I think there's been a lot of talk of, there being preferential rates for things that are already EPC rated A to C, say, but actually if you've got an EPC D or E rated property, is there anything that OSB is doing to kind of encourage people to make those improvements?
So we have a whole ESG division who are focusing on this very thing. One or two of my colleagues in my team are involved with that as well. I mean, we have a landlord leaders initiative there is a landlord leaders website for anyone who's not aware. There's quite a lot of information on there about the green agenda and ways of improving. I know that we already have a bridging product in place for improving energy efficiency of lower rated buildings, and I know that across the board we're working together to try and work out ways of promoting that further, and just working with our borrower clients to improve across the board EPC ratings. So conversations are underway. There's a lot of research being done. I mentioned our partner firm, Kama Research, who provide a lot of intelligence on that. And so, yeah, in short, there are likely to be more tangible products coming out to try and assist with this challenge going forward.
Great. I think that's a really good note to end on, Will. So thank you to everyone for joining this, the first in the Green Mortgage Masterclass series. The second in the series is going to take place on Monday, also at 12:30 with the Green Finance Institute. So please tune in for that. A registration link is going to go out in your feedback that will be sent after this masterclass. And yeah, thank you so much for joining and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.